David Brett, he was putting on we wanted him to put on a speech on ethics, which is something that's sorely lacking in a lot of places in this world. He is quite a speaker and authority on ethics. I actually tried to get it in 4 different mainstream churches here in Mechanicsville, and was told that it was too political. So that's really set a kind of a burr into my saddle. I can't believe what I hear sometimes. But let me introduce David. David is a professor at Randolph-Macon College. He's the economics chair. Like I say, he goes around the state doing wonderful programs on ethics in schools, K to 12, and the lack of, and like I say, he's an all-around good guy. And David will be telling you, how we're going to run this forum and how he would like to see it go. And again, I would like to say Bucky Stanley had to leave early. He was here. As you might know, they had the missing child right there in that area, and he's gone to give a little hand in that. So just want people to know that he was available tonight, and that's about it. So without further ado, David.
It's hard to follow a deep baritone and an evangelical preacher. I don't know what I got for you after all that. But welcome, everybody. It's good to be here. We got a few simple game rules we're going to try to follow tonight. We're going to skip all the introductory remarks by candidates. We're kind of assuming you know most of them. We're going to skip all the conclusions, and we're just going to try to get right at it. And so in order to do that, we're going to ask that all the candidates stick to a very strict 1-minute rule. We're going to have a 30-second yellow flag, and then a 1-minute, your time's up, red flag, in an attempt, right, thank you. And we're going to hold everyone to that. We're going to hold you all to one other rule, if we can ask as well, and that is no rebuttals, no going back to a previous question. We're just going to zip through the questions that are posed, try to stay on issue, and that will let us get through all of your questions so that we don't spend the whole evening on 2 or 3 questions. We want to zip through. Can everybody hear me in the back, by the way? Sorry about that. Good. Thank you. Good. All right. So with that, I think I'm going to.
Anytime anybody wants to go, new card or have a card picked up.
Oh, good. Yeah. If any new cards that need to be picked up right now, or if you need a new card, just raise your hand, and Bob will come around and we'll get up to speed. All right, and with that, I think that we have a few questions lined up already. And I'll start off with those. Some of the Tea Party leaders have set up the first few questions. And so we'll start down at this end, go all the way down, and we'll just come right back in order. 1 minute each. And so with that, let's just start with Ms. Jackson. Here's question 1. I haven't looked at them, and so I don't even know what order they're in. Do you support giving Hanover County broader local taxing authority, such as meals tax, as proposed in the Hanover legislative agenda for the 2011 General Assembly?
Oh, sorry, I wasn't sure this was on. I'm sorry, would you mind repeating it? We were trying.
Sure, and this is for everybody, so this will go all the way down. Do you support giving Hanover County broader local taxing authority, such as the meals tax, as proposed in the Hanover legislative agenda for the 2011 General Assembly?
Well, I think it's something we have to take a hard look at. I know we're trying to keep our tax base, our taxes low here in Hanover County. We're all certainly in agreement on that. We are looking at some opportunities to bring more tourist dollars into the county, and one of the ways that some localities have done that is to have some additional fees on services that tourists primarily take advantage of. So if that is something that would help us keep our taxes low, at the same time we could be capturing some of those tourist dollars, I think it's something we need to take a hard look at. On the other hand, I don't think we want to penalize our citizens here in Hanover with a meals tax that is going to be problematic for our families. So I think we've got to look at what's the best way to do that. Is that the correct way? Is it something we want to look at perhaps more along the hotel taxes, which is going to be more out-of-town folks? But I think it's something we should have a hard look at and determine if it is the best thing for Hanover County or not.
Mr. Vaya, same question.
We certainly need revenue in the county, and we will have to search for as many ways as we can to do that. Some commercial growth in the right areas would be good, but I would not at this time be in favor of a meals tax.
Mr. Davis.
I believe taxing authority should be at the lowest level. I think that was the first question, and I do not support a meals tax.
Ms. Kelly, we second.
Thank you. Again, just as we would prefer state decisions to federal decisions, we clearly prefer local decisions to state decisions. And so I would support greater flexibility in putting government closest to the people in making those decisions. I would not support a meals tax at this time. I did not support it last time.
Thank you. Ms. Wynant?
We, at the county level, do need other sources of revenue. However, I don't believe the meals tax is the answer. However, some other forms of ways to receive revenue into the county would be acceptable. And it would also help us from being dependent only on our real estate tax, and that is a burden to our citizens. So I do support other forms of raising revenue, however, not the meals tax.
Thank you. Mr. Ellis?
I'd certainly support the option of having that at the local level. In general, I would support expanding the options that localities have to get revenues. I think the General Assembly has not been real good about fulfilling their fiscal responsibilities over the years, and there's a lot of unfunded mandates, a lot of expenses that are coming down to localities. So I would always be in favor of expanding the options that are available to localities. Whether or not I would support a meals tax itself, countywide, I think that would be problematic. But we have a lot of special tax districts around the county that have limited geographic reach. And it may be that we could explore a special tax district that was focused very closely along the interstates where we might impose a meals tax there. It's worth talking about. But the question literally, yeah, I would support that option coming down to the local level.
Great, thank you. How are we doing? Timekeeper, everybody so far so good? This half of the room, give them a small round of applause as an audience. They're helping you to get your questions in. All right, let's see if we got equally good participation.
We will certainly try. I certainly would support the General Assembly granting additional authorities for the county to levy different taxes. However, I would not support exercising that authority at this time. I have committed to retaining the current tax rates for the next 5 years, as has the board. The however in all of this is if the state continues to send down unfunded mandates, there was even some talk a year or so ago about the state actually handing over the responsibility for roads construction to the localities. If that occurs, then we can't raise enough funds through the real estate tax to fund those type of new mandates. So again, I support the authority, but I do not support exercising that authority at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. Mr. Peterson?
I'm going to take a different approach to this. I know this is on the legislative agenda that has been approved by the board to seek this authority from the state. However, in 2004, the citizens of this county had a referendum on these very taxes we're talking about and resoundingly said no. For us to go forward with this without citizen support, I think is wrong.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Hazard?
Ditto.
Good. Sorry about that. Mr. Wade, thank you.
In 2004, Elton Wade stopped in Hanover County the meals tax. It was given to the board back in 2004. It had to be a unanimous vote to get that tax in Hanover County. It was a 6-to-1 vote. I voted against it then because I didn't see a meals tax put on our people. I would not again support a meals tax. In the following year, after we it died, kind of lack of unanimous vote, it was put back to the state for a referendum. And that's when it came back to the people to be voted on. And then the people overwhelmingly said no. And I don't support a meals tax.
Thank you. Ms. Cash?
Well, I've enjoyed hearing all the arguments so far on both sides, and it makes sense to have the ability at the local level to make certain decisions, but I would not support at this time any meals tax.
Mr. Khan?
All right, as far as the meal tax, let's be real. Times are hard enough. We don't need a new tax anywhere. What we do need to do is, county needs to live within its current budget, which is what we're all expected to do. And if I go in there, of course, I would never vote for a new tax. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mr. Kay, I think we'll start with you at that end again. And second question, do you believe in sustainable development? End of question, explain.
Sustainable development. All right, can we step out to Chesterfield County? Okay, that's not what we want here. At least not in my opinion, not in the opinion of a lot of people I've spoken with. We're talking about a 30% high density population, or whatever they wanted to call it, development. We've seen 30% drive to the other end of 360 in Chesterfield County. We can see what can happen to an area that we all love, and we all love it for the reason that it is rural. Let's keep it rural. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cash?
I'm going to have to beg just a moment to make sure. You said sustainable development?
That's right. That's right.
All right, well, let me just answer what I think that might be. I believe that we have economic development zones that have been agreed upon in certain areas that make sense with the right businesses that would be compatible with our values and our own core values. I do not believe that we want growth in those areas where we have made decisions that we want to be able to have rural areas. I like looking out of my yard and seeing the farm next door. I like the land I have, and I believe that's what makes Hanover so special. So I would appreciate maintaining those same kinds of divisions and appreciations for what we have in Hanover.
Thank you. Mr. Wade?
Hanover County does have a program we try to keep our development at 7 to 30%. That seems to be the way that Hanover over the years through the comprehensive plan has tried to develop. I know some people think a comprehensive plan, is not what it ought to be, but if we didn't have the comprehensive plan, you'd have sprawl like Chesterfield. So today, I certainly feel that sustained growth here is profitable for the county. So I certainly feel that way.
Thank you. Mr. Hazard?
Sustainable development is one of those catchwords for Agenda 21 items. The way I look at it, we have we're getting real close when we deal with our RC zoning. This is another way that we tell you what you can do with your property before you even go there. The very idea that as a county, we're willing to give up our basic property rights before we even get to the courthouse just kills me. And that's one of the reasons I'm dead set against this RC zoning, which I think is the beginning of the same type of thing, sustainable development.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson?
Well, as Mr. Hazard said, I realize sustainability has been used heavily with Agenda 21, but sustainability is a word that means more than just that, though. Sustainability just means common sense approach to utilizing the assets and the resources we have in a responsible way without waste. Any of us that have grown up in my age knew we had to grow up very frugally, and we had to be very responsible with all our resources, and we have to do that today. So sustainability, in the sense of the true meaning of the word, is something we need to do. Sustainability in the sense of using it as an excuse to take away property rights, we do not need to do. But we all need to be responsible in our environment. We need to be responsible and not waste any of the resources we have. I like to say I was green when it was still a color. I built my home 20 years ago, and it's passive solar, it's earth sheltered, and I'm utilizing and preserving our energy resources. I think we all need to take that kind of responsibility on ourselves, but that is individual.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Gordon?
Yes, this is my first time in this church, and before I left home this evening, I went to the internet and I Googled the church to get directions. And without those directions, I could have ended up in Chesterfield. But I was looking for a church in Hanover. And so I had a plan to get here, and that was that Google map. Well, the same thing applies to planning for Hanover County. We have a comprehensive plan that it was about 2 years in development, and it included quite a bit of citizen involvement in building that plan. I honor that plan as I sat on the Board of Supervisors, and I believe that Hanover County has maintained, has established a quality of life that we've come to appreciate because we developed the plan and then we honored the plan. So yes, I believe in sustainable development, and I believe the comprehensive plan makes room for that.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. And over to Mr. Ellis.
I do believe in sustainable development, and I'm kind of glad it's coming this way because I thought Mr. Peterson and Mr. Gordon captured a lot of the aspects of that. I'm aware of the fact that there are folks who look at the term sustainable development as something that means a lot more. I tend to use the word in the way that Mr. Peterson did, in the way that it's in the dictionary. I like our English language. I like to use words that are found in the dictionary in the way that they are defined in the dictionary. So in that sense, I do believe in sustainable development. The alternative would be unsustainable development. And to me, that means a course of action that cannot be continued at some point. Hanover County is going to continue to grow. I mean, what got me out to run 4 years ago was the comp plan update process, which I thought was not a good process because it lacked enough citizen input and influence, and I didn't like the result. I thought there was too much growth put into the plan. However, I don't disagree with the principles that Mr. Gordon laid forth. You do have to have a plan. It's irresponsible not to have a plan. And I use sustainable development the way it's found in the dictionary, so I do believe in it and I support it.
Thank you. Ms. Winans?
I support property owners' rights. And you'll find that on my brochure on my website, and you found it 4 years ago when I ran. And however, I do believe that Hanover has a good comprehensive plan. I took a class taught by a professor from Virginia Tech, and there were people from all over the state, other supervisors. He held up Hanover County's comp plan and said, this is an example of a good plan that allows for rural areas and residential areas, and it is properly done. And it had citizen input. Maybe not as much citizen input as we'd like, but I think we're headed in the right direction, and I do believe that we can make it all work.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly-Weizak?
Well, again, with the previous question, what we're talking about here is government that is closest to the people. So back in sometime, I believe in the 70s, we determined that we as Hanover County would have a comprehensive plan so that we could preserve rural areas, we could provide for suburban areas. I happen to choose to live in a suburban area because, you know, I don't want a lot of yard to keep up with. So, but I respect people's rights to live out in a rural area. So I think it's wonderful that we have that option, and we have that option because we determined that we would have a comprehensive plan. Now, property rights is something that it's very tricky because I may want, what I want to do with my property may not square with what my neighbor wants to look at when he gets up in the morning or she gets up in the morning. So your job as a supervisor is always to provide consensus, to protect people's constitutional rights. And we can give that a warm and fuzzy term like smart growth or sustainable development all we want, but in the end, it comes down to personal property rights.
Thank you. Very good. Mr. Davis?
Thank you. You can run the verbiage any way you want it. There's no substitute for planning well. With property owners' rights, one of the things that I've seen is the word sustainable development. It says, well, if you're not for it, then you're obviously for unsustainable development. I don't agree with that premise. I don't agree with that premise. So don't give me a definition that then I would have to disagree with and then try to figure out where I come from. Property owners' rights are fundamental. Now, if you move to Hanover County, you're understanding what you're dealing with, that we're a rural natured county. We want to protect our historic resources. But you have to plan for that. You can't turn around and say, well, what I'm going to do is cluster 30 homes here in an area that really has no service. The roads can't support it, and we've got a lot of problems trying to get back and forth to these 30 homes, but it protected the other 70. And then you end up with a bad plan. So property owners' rights and planning like you would do in a business, there is no substitute, folks.
Thank you, Mr. Vaya.
We do have a comprehensive plan in Hanover County, which we do our very best to adhere to. We strive to maintain a 2% growth rate during this very difficult time in our economy. It's been hard for us to even reach anywhere near that part. And as we grow, we need to make sure that we put our growth in the comprehensive plan where things are planned for, and while at the same time maintaining our green space and open spaces in the outer county.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson.
Thank you. I would agree that we have to have responsible development. I think what we're talking about is really the most involvement by the most citizens is how we get the best plan. So I agree that the involvement of all the citizens and what Hanover County will look like in the future is going to give us the best plan that we can possibly have. So I would invite all of you as we go into that planning process next year to be actively involved, to make sure that we have a great comprehensive plan with strong citizen involvement that keeps government close to the people. And that's why running as an independent, my concern is to hear what your concerns are and to best represent you in the Henry District and for all of Hanover. If our forefathers, who we've talked about tonight, had not done a good enough job, most of us wouldn't be here. We wouldn't love Hanover County for all of the wonderful things that we have if it hadn't been properly planned and had the involvement of citizens. So I would invite all of you to stay involved. That's the best way that we can have the best plan and the best outcome with responsible development.
Thank you. Bob? Yep. I think we're going to move to some questions from the audience. Good. Why don't I ask one 30-second question? Max 30 seconds for this one. Sorry about that. Let's start down with Ms. Jackson again, and we'll go down this way, and then I'll come back with some questions from the audience. If inflation is 2% and population growth is 2%, what amount would you let spending go up by?
I wouldn't let spending go up at all. I think the best way that we can do the best job, recognizing that we have inflation, that we are going to have population growth, I think there are a lot of resources that we can take advantage of without allowing our budget or spending to go up. I think there are ways that we can cut our spending, and there are ways that we can all be involved in the process and utilize the resources that we have here in Hanover County without having to pay for them. I'll give you a perfect example. When Mr. Vaya, my husband, sat on the Parks and Rec Commission. Oh, that was 30. Sorry, I thought I had a minute. Anyway, they used a lot of volunteer help in the county, used expertise of citizens in the county, and it didn't cost a penny to do a great comprehensive plan for our parks.
Good. Thank you. Mr. Vaya?
We need absolutely to maintain our spending, and that's exactly what we try to do and strive for in every case and matter that comes before the board, and I will continue to try to do that to the very best of my ability for the citizens of the county.
Thank you. Mr. Davis?
I think the premise of the question is just because certain things rise, then obviously spending must rise, so would you agree with that? Anytime that you look at something, you have to be responsible when it comes to budgeting, and I've done that in the public sector, I've done it in the private sector. When you look at saving on expenditures, then you don't have to automatically look and raise expenditures or think that that's going to be the answer. You can cut spending in many areas, and these are the times that we can do it right now because it's easier to do because the public's doing it and the government can do it as well.
Thank you. Time, Ms. Kelly-Wiesek.
Thank you. In my 20 years experience in the private sector, I can tell you that just because one area is increasing does not mean others have to increase. And I have a lot of experience with not just keeping costs at the status quo, but getting the same result with less. So I think that, you know, yes, inflation may rise, yes, population may grow, but we need to do everything we can to make sure that we keep our expenditures as low as possible.
Thank you. We're out of time. Ms. Winans?
I think the answer I would give was as little as possible. And I think that our decision on the board in the last 4 years to cut the budget for the first time in the history of Hanover County speaks for how we all feel about spending. We have made a great effort to reduce our budget, and I think we will continue to do that for as long as we can and still maintain the services that our county needs to provide.
Thank you. Mr. Ellis?
I'm going to borrow that answer as little as possible. I mean, it's hard to make that equation work without knowing more specifics. The private sector has made a science out of delivering less product for the same money or more money for a long time. We're paying a lot more at the grocery store than what we have been. A lot of those techniques can be used successfully in our government to increase efficiency. But I think as little as possible is the best answer you're going to have there. As at some point, your services will disappear if you're not keeping up with inflation and population growth.
Thank you. Mr. Gordon?
Testing. Okay. I think the one of the challenges of serving on the Board of Supervisors is determining what is expected. What do the citizens that elect you expect of you? You know, I don't think you can look at 2 or 3 numbers and make a decision regarding services. I think you need to connect. You need to be able to connect with the people that you represent and understand what's important to them. If their position is we should reduce services, then you could be looking at a reduction in the tax rate. But if there's a demand for greater services, then you have to look the other way.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson?
I think the formula doesn't help at all. What we're really talking about is if we want to live in the quality county, we have to do the core functions and do them well. That's education, that's law enforcement, safety, and infrastructure. Whatever it takes to do those at the best quality level, that we need to stand up and fund. The things that are not in those core functions, we need to be trimmed down to keep the cost down.
Thank you. Mr. Hazard?
Well, I think if we look at the history of what's happened over the last 10, 11 years, the population grew at 15%, the budget grew at 106. So obviously what we've had in the past had no 2% limit by any means. It seems like it's whatever they want, they get. And I'll give you one example. 2008, our budget was $385,213,441. 2009, it was $429,541,977, $44,328, 28,000 more than the year before. I would say that's a little too much.
Thank you. Mr. Wade?
That's a lot of figures thrown out there, and I don't know whether I can support all that, but let me just say this. You know, we just got, in the past year and a half, we got a triple bond rating in Hanover County. And in triple bond rating in all 3 units, you don't get a triple bond rating by taxing and spend. It gets it by being frugal with the dollar. In Hanover, I'm proud as a Board of Supervisors be a part of seeing that happen in Hanover County.
Thank you. Ms. Cash?
Well, I think that anytime you have to make decisions about what you're going to give up or what you're going to keep or how much it's going to cost, you have to keep the priorities in education and safety, the things that are important to us and to the population. After that, I think you and the citizens, all of us need to work together and bring consensus on what it is we do need to do, what our priorities are, and whether or not there is a need for an increase of any sort for services. But I can't see that. I can see responsible decision-making and choices being made.
Thank you. Mr. Kite?
Well, with of course, with the help of the citizen input, is where we can decide where cuts and spending needs to be. As of right now, Hanover County seems to be doing just fine. We have, like Elton said, triple bond rating, one of the best counties, as far as I'm concerned, to live in. So let's keep the expenses down. Let's go with no new taxes, and of course, it's all about the citizen input.
Great, thank you. And Mr. Kite, I think we'll start at your end with this one, and then maybe we'll take a 1-minute stretch break and maybe a tea party announcement. 1 full minute on this one. When appointing a person to the school board, what are the 3 most important questions you would ask them?
All right, not my area of expertise, but as far as that's concerned, it's qualifications. We need to make sure that they're qualified to do what they say they're doing. Carol here would probably be the best to answer that question, but I just think that it's, 1, make sure they have the qualifications, 2, make sure we have the need, and 3, I would think the money to pay them without increasing our taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cash.
I think the first question is, do you actually believe all children are going to be learning and all children have the right to learn? Because what we want to bring together is a group of people who work for all our children. I think the next thing is, do you have the energy to do what it needs to do and to ask the questions that you need to ask to make that happen? And then I think the third one is to look at the skills that are being brought on board by you and by other people to make sure that you have a group of people who together bring a group of skills to make a difference in the school system and to help lead.
Thank you. Mr. Wade.
I've been around the school system 50 years, and what I feel, certainly for someone to sit on the board of school board, that they certainly have to love children, and it wouldn't be bad, too, that they have children in their school system. And number 3, I would say that in working as a team, one person, even on a school board, can do nothing of himself. The same way on this board of supervisors. One, I can tell you and promise you the world, but if I don't have 3 others that agree with me on any subject, it will go nowhere. But I think those 3 things certainly would signify a good school board.
All right, thanks, Mr. Wade. Mr. Hazard?
I think one of the first things I would ask is the education of the kids more important than the reputation of the school system? And secondly, do you think that throwing money at education educates our kids? And thirdly, are you community-minded enough that you really feel like you can serve for the amount of time and effort that it takes to do the job?
Thank you. Mr. Peterson?
First and foremost, you need to have a passion for youth. That's our youth are our future, and that's got to be the first thing I would be looking for in an appointee to the school board. Secondly, I would be looking for somebody who has the experience in administering budgets, because that's a big part. As half of our county budget goes to the schools, and it's important that it be done very responsibly.
Thank you. Mr. Gordon?
I have made several appointments to the school board over the years, and I am a former school board member. And to my knowledge, I am the only supervisor who interviewed multiple candidates each time I had the opportunity to make an appointment. This is a critical appointment and one that I take seriously. I usually, I don't make political appointments for any board, but particularly for the school board. The 3 questions that I typically ask is, what have you done? What have you done in your life to demonstrate commitment to the community? Not just to the school system, but commitment to the community. What is your philosophy on public education? How important is it? Is it only important to parents of children, or is it important to the entire community? And then where is your passion? What wakes you up in the morning? Where is your passion? Those are the 3 questions that I typically ask.
Thank you. Mr. Ellis?
I would also plan to do interviews and not make political appointments for school board, planning commission seat, and so forth. I am actually finishing up my doctoral dissertation at VCU on how people perceive the quality of public schools. And so one of the questions I'd want to ask an interviewee for the position comes from my dissertation work, and it would be basically, when you think of the quality of a public school, what comes to mind? How do you know a good quality public school? And I think that will lead them to discuss things that would lead us down other paths. It would be illustrative, illuminating. The second question I would ask is, what big issues do you see facing Hanover County Public Schools in the next 5 to 10 years, and where do you want to see the schools be in the next 15 or 20 years? And then finally, similarly to some previous comments, do they have the time and the commitment, and are they a team player so that they have the attitude and the skill set to do the job?
Thank you. Ms. Winans?
I think the first thing I would look for is their qualifications. Have they been involved in education in the past? The second thing I would look for is responsiveness to the community and to the families that are in the school system. That's very important because I often have questions from parents and I turn them over to my school board member because he knows more and he can give them a better answer a lot of times. And the third thing I would look for is somebody who's been involved in the school system. It had children in the school system and PTA involvement. Community involvement is very important.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly-Wiese?
I think the number one thing I'm going to look for is common sense. Is this person really more concerned with doing what makes good sense for our children as opposed to promoting some sort of political correctness? I'm also going to look for a problem solver. I want somebody who's going to be able to be fair, make good decisions, do more with less. I'd like to see somebody who can keep us getting 67% of the money we spend going directly into the classroom, making us in that top 10 in terms of performance and that bottom 10 in terms of per pupil spending. I think that's a great statistic for us. And then again, constituent service, someone who has a sense of responding to parents. There's very little that is important to us than the care and the treatment of our children. So I want to make sure that those people are responding to parental concerns.
Thank you. Mr. Davis?
The first thing I would ask a school board appointee or somebody looking to be appointed during the interview process is, who do you believe you're accountable to? Who do you believe you're accountable to? And it should be the students, the teachers, the principals, and the parents. Second thing I would ask is, are you willing and able, because it's going to come, to have the candid conversations for the things that go on within the brick and mortar schools? Are you willing to have those candid conversations when they tell you the issues that they had there and take them back up to the senior leadership? Are you willing to have those candid conversations? And the third thing is I want to have a strong, strong sense that you have not only been involved in the community, but for a long time, and I want to see what your record has been in the community, your record of service and service in action. Those would be the top three things that I would look for. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Baya?
As far as a school board appointee, I look for someone with energy, experience, knowledge, a real leader. I meet with my school board appointee after every school board meeting. That way I know what is going on in the school system, and it gives me the opportunity to offer my opinions.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson?
Thank you. I think the first thing that I would ask is, what are you going to do to assure quality education for the children of Hanover County? And I would ask about, in the classroom experience, I would like to see someone who has actually been in the shoes of a teacher so that we can make sure that we are adequately reaching the students. I'd ask them what their accountability is going to be to the parents of the students and how are they going to involve parents in the decisions that affect their children. I would echo what some others have said, that I don't think anyone on this panel should pre-decide who their school board appointee is going to be or make it a political appointment. I think we should have applications and get the most qualified members of the school board so that we can do the best job for our children and their families. And also, we know the importance of education for businesses in the community. The business community understands an investment in education, and getting the right people making those decisions is going to help us in terms of economic growth as well.
Thank you all very much. Let's have a round of applause for all the candidates on round one. I think at this stage, I'm going to give you the good news. We're going to pass on the altar call, but we are in a church, so we are going to pass the plate. All right, let's go. This will be round two, a little bit different format. The first couple of questions I have, they've all been given to me, all from the audience in a particular order, and that matters somewhat. The first couple are for all the candidates, but then beyond that, you have asked certain questions to individual candidates or to candidates from a particular political district, and so I will only ask that question to the folks that you put on your cards. And so we'll go through it that way, and Bob has tried to be equitable so that we have about an equal amount of questions per candidate. So I think the process is fair. All right, with that, let's start round two, and I'll start off with a question to all candidates. Where did we leave off last time? Okay, Ms. Jackson, I guess we'll go back on this one, come back again. Have any of you ever switched and or denounced a political party? If so, why? Have any of you ever switched from a political party or denounced a political party? If so, why?
No, I haven't. I've always been an independent, and I continue to be an independent because I don't want to be tied to any political party or any special interest. I am only beholden to the citizens of Henry District and Hanover County who will elect me to represent them. So I have not been a member of any party, voted for candidates, and I would hope that you would do the same, that you would vote for the best candidate to represent you, to be your voice on the Board of Supervisors, and not listening to the special interests, but listening to the citizens who really matter.
Thank you. Mr. Byer?
The most important thing to me about being supervisor is being accessible to the citizens and to listen, and when they call me, to not only get back in touch with them by phone, but if at all possible, to go talk to them in person. I am a Republican, and I vote on each issue that comes before us on its merit and not ever along party line.
Thank you. Mr. Davis?
I've never switched a party. I've never denounced a party.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly Weissing?
I am the Republican candidate for the Chickahominy District. I have been a Republican virtually all my life, though I was raised to believe that you voted for the candidate, not the party. However, I found that I never voted for a Democrat, so I decided to join the Republican Party. And I think that, thank you. I think that it's important to note that as Republicans, we have a creed, and as chairman of the Republican Party, I read that creed at the beginning of every meeting. It espoused where we were going, what we believed in, and of principal importance to that, I believe, was that we as individuals should assume our responsibilities as citizens in a free society, and I think that that's what we're all about here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Reynolds?
I have been a member of the Republican Committee, and I'm running as an independent. And when I signed up to vote when I was 18, many years ago, I told the lady I was a Republican, and she said, "Are you sure?" Because back then, all of Hanover was Democrat. So I decided to run as an independent because I feel like I can better represent the people, and I'm also a little disheartened by the bickering and arguing between the parties, and I want to represent the people I work for most first.
Thank you. Mr. Ellis?
I have always, for a long time I considered myself to be an independent, and I have voted Republican, I have voted Democratic, I have voted third party. After George W. Bush got elected for his second term, I joined the local Democratic committee. When I ran in 2007, I resigned from the committee to run as an independent for the board. I lost that election, I rejoined the committee. When I decided to run this time around, I resigned from the Democratic Committee to run as an independent. And that's primarily because of my job. My full-time job is at UVA. We do survey research for a lot of Virginia state agencies and local governments. And my boss feels it's very important to keep the workplace as apolitical as possible. So that's the primary reason. Secondarily, I do think it would be useful to have independents on the board. I think taking a step away from political party bosses is a healthy step. Thirdly, I do recognize, I'm not a complete idiot, that it does make it easier to get the conversation started. I have denounced Republican top leadership, but I've made a very careful distinction between top leadership and the good people who are the rank and file of the Republican Party.
Thank you. Mr. Gordon?
For the first 30 years of my life, I was a dedicated Democrat. For the next 30 years, I was dedicated and committed to the Republican Party. For the last 30 years, and I plan to live all of those 30 years, I expect that I will be an independent. And the primary reason, there are a number of reasons why that's the case, but I think the primary reason is I don't want to lose sight on who I answer to. My responsibility as a supervisor is to answer to the people of the South Anna District and the people of the South Anna District only. And so I believe that I can do that as a consensus builder, and that's what I am. As a consensus builder, I believe I can do that more effectively as an independent.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson?
Okay, I'm the Republican candidate for the Mechanicsville seat, and the simple answer to the question is no. However, I think it's very important to realize that the R, the D, the I mean a lot probably up till November 8th. Come November 9th, we're all belong to the same party, America.
Thank you. Mr. Hazard?
I'm the Republican nominee for the South Anna District. I have always been a Republican, but I've also always been a Tea Party member. I was a Tea Party member before you formed it, so I just didn't know it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wade?
20 years ago, I ran for the board, and I ran as a Democrat. I beat the incumbent, who was a Republican. I also, at that time, I'm certainly not liberal. I'm certainly conservative. I never, before that time, never really belonged to any party, but I was challenged to run against my opponent as being a Democrat. But today I'm in the Republican Party, and that's where I'm running this year. But as Mr. Hazard said, Tea Party, I've certainly been a member even before they were even thought of the last 20 years, because I certainly believe in less government, less taxes, and certainly I believe in the Constitution of the United States. And whether you vote, or whether you're in my area, whether you're a Democrat or Republican or anybody, even if you don't vote, I'm here to serve you. And that's my philosophy. And in serving you, I know when I vote, I affect this whole county. So that's where you can count on me as certainly a supervisor.
Thank you. Ms. Cash?
Well, I grew up in Northwest Florida, and the only thing you could be when you first started was a Democrat. So 40-some-odd years ago, I was a Democrat. That's the only time I've ever been associated with any party. I'm an independent, and I am, for many reasons, because I believe in choosing the person who fits the characteristics that I want in that particular position. And I would think that in this position, it would be extremely important to be the person who represents people and not a party.
Thank you. Mr. Kite?
Well, since I was 18, Republican. First person I ever went and voted for was Ronald Reagan. I've always been Republican, and but I did stray to the Ross Perot thing for a while there, just to try to find the financial answer. But I'm running as an independent, one, obviously, because I could have never beat Elton out on getting a Republican bid. But I'm running as an independent mainly because I want to be able to help all people take good information from any and all parties, whether it's T, Democrat, Republican, Independent, to make it work for the people. I'm also pushing for satellite locations to make sure that we are getting the feedback from all the people, not just the ones who are able to make it to the meetings. And of course, when it comes down to that, it's all about the people. What do they want?
Thank you, Mr. Cutt. I think we'll start down at your end with this question. Do you believe individual rights come from God or from government? Let me repeat that. So, can you all hear with my back? Do you believe individual rights come from God or government?
Well, I guess God gave us all our original individual rights. State and government tried to change that and make it to work where it worked for them. It's really all about what you want. What are your thoughts? How do you live your life? And I guess that about covers that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cash?
You know, I think those rights come in both places. We have the rights to make certain decisions, and I think those came from God. I think He gave us who we are. I think that government also allows us, because of the things, to have our own individual rights as well. But it starts from who we are.
Thank you. Mr. Wade?
I believe the individual rights are okay, but I believe it comes from God. And let me quote a verse of scripture here that I certainly was reading this morning. 2 Samuel 23, verse 4. He that ruleth over men must be just, ruling in the fear of God.
Thank you. Mr. Hackett?
There's no question all of our rights come from God. Government works for us. The government doesn't give us anything. Government takes everything it can away from us. The very thought process that would say that government gives you any right tells you that we're headed in the wrong direction. God gives us our rights, and we better be thankful for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson?
I think this is going to be a uniform answer. All of us agree that God is the creator and our rights come from God. Government, basically set up by our forefathers, was supposed to be given. The rights were supposed to be given by us to the government, not the other way around.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon.
If I may quote John D. Rockefeller, I believe in an all-wise and all-loving God, named by whatever name, and that the individual's highest fulfillment, greatest happiness, and widest usefulness ought to be found in living in harmony with His will.
Thank you. Mr. Ellis?
I think our rights are intrinsic to us as human beings, and so those who see God as the ultimate creator and the ultimate arbiter of who we are would say that those rights come from God. There are people, as the pastor mentioned when we started, who do not believe in God. There are people who believe in different forms of God. There are people who believe in more naturalistic types around the world. So if you expand that concept, I would say that our rights are intrinsic to us as individuals. They're about our autonomy and our control over our own circumstances. Government is a creation of ourselves to protect our rights, not to give us our rights. They're there beforehand, but government protects our rights in its best form.
Thank you. Ms. Winans?
God.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly-Weissett?
Amen. I too believe that our rights come from our Lord and Creator, and I think this would be a good time to say that there's something else I think that we don't talk about enough, and that is that we all are entitled to a certain amount of human dignity, and our Lord intends that for us, but work is intrinsic to that sense of human dignity, and so unfortunately what I think we have done is sometimes we're relying on government to give people things, and it disrupts their ability to have dignity in their lives and to provide for their families. So government, in addition to protecting the rights that our Lord has given us, should also insist that humans work for that dignity as well.
Thank you. Mr. Davis?
Certainly our rights come from God, and here's a really important aspect of that. If they don't come from God and they come from the government, then your rights can be voted away, or when a party changes, or when a majority changes, then you no longer have rights. But if your rights are given to you by the Creator, that who created you, then those rights cannot be taken away, and then you have a basis to know when your rights are being infringed upon.
Thank you. Mr. Wyatt?
It's my belief that our rights all come from God, and we operate by His will alone.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson?
I think we're all in agreement that our rights do come from God, and I believe that we also, with those rights, have a responsibility to be involved in our government, to make sure that our rights are not taken away, that we do respect each other's rights, and that we collectively work together to make sure that we are respecting each other's rights and that we are working together to find solutions that we can all live with. So I think with that right comes responsibility that God has given us.
Thank you all. Okay, here comes some questions aimed at individuals or members of various voting districts. All right, this one, and by the way, to all candidates, these questions are not coming from me, they're coming from the people, and so you can, I think we provided some fair questions that are not too pointed. This one is directed to Ed Vaya. What will you do to promote personal property rights and provide each of us the right to enjoy the quiet repose of our property? Only to Mr. Vaya.
I would seek to help maintain property rights so that everyone can enjoy their property the way they want to. I know at my house that I have some room, and it's always good to be able to utilize your own property, and it's always been a pleasure and a thrill, and I guess you can thank God for that too, for how fortunate we are here in Hanover County.
Thank you. This question is for the candidates from the Henry District. Describe your view of an ideal growth plan for the Henry District in Mechanicsville. I guess we'll start with Ms. Jackson, and well, Mr. Davis, you go ahead, Mike, sorry about that. Mr. Davis.
Repeat the question for me real quick, because I heard something about Mechanicsville.
You bet. Describe your view of an ideal growth plan for the Henry District in Mechanicsville.
Well, I think, first of all, to describe an ideal plan here without taking into account that you have a 4-year term might be inappropriate. What I do think is that you have to have a plan that falls within the guidelines of maintaining the culture of Hanover. You also need to respect and hold very dear private property owners' rights. So I think those two are very, very important. You understand when you move to certain areas, we have kind of a split district, whether it's rural, and then we have some other areas that are certainly suburban. So you have to look at each case individually. What I am not a fan of is legislation being passed from on high for somebody who's never even come down to a district, or who said, this is what I think will work based on the numbers, without even coming down into the Henry District or even our county for some point. So the point is that we have to have two fundamental things. One, preservation and protection of property owners' rights. And number two is to make sure that as you have a growth plan, that it needs to fit within the nature and the value system that you have already in place in your county and the uniqueness that you have. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson.
Thank you. I think the ideal plan is one that has the most citizen input, that will take into consideration the balance of all of the resources that we have in the Henry District and preserving our rural resources. We have a lot of farmers who have been farming, and their families have been farming in the Henry District for decades, and we need to respect their rural resources and what we need to do to protect those, as well as accommodating growth as it comes into the district in a way that is going to be balanced and not cost the existing citizens. So one of the ways we need to look at that is to make sure that everybody has a role, everybody has a voice in that plan. We are required by the Constitution of Virginia to have a plan by the state legislature, but it is our plan, it's the plan that we determine is best for Hanover County, respecting the rights of the folks in that district. So I would invite, again, all of you to be part of that process so we can have the best possible plan.
Thank you. This question is directed to candidates from the South Anna, Beaver Dam, and Cold Harbor districts. Do you think the county attorney should be setting the legislative agenda? Let's start with South Anna. Mr. Gordon?
No, and that doesn't occur today. The Board of Supervisors establishes its own legislative agenda. The county attorney only provides staff's support in creating that agenda and advocating for that agenda at the General Assembly. But again, the responsibility falls fully on the hands and on the shoulders of the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you. Mr. Hazard.
Well, I would certainly hope that the county attorney is not setting the agenda. But the agenda should reflect the attitude of the citizens. The very idea that we have an agenda that is trying to usurp what you said you didn't want in 2004, meaning meal tax and any other revenue stream that we can find for this county. You know, whether it came from the county attorney or it came from my supervisors, I think it's wrong.
Thank you. Mr. Wade?
I certainly don't support our lawyer. He's there, as far as I'm concerned, to guide us in whether right or wrong. I certainly don't support the lawyer that I serve under to certainly give me his thoughts and his opinion. He's hired by the Board of Supervisors, and he works for us. And our decision is the final decision.
Thank you. Ms. Cash?
No, I don't believe that the county attorney should set the legislative agenda.
And Mr. Kite?
No, he definitely shouldn't set the agenda. And as they said, it's all about the supervisors and the people, citizen input.
Thank you. This question is directed to candidates from South Anna, Beaver Dam, and Chickahominy districts. The question is, concerning high-speed internet, how much federal and state grant money is available to implement? I guess we'll start with South Anna again. Mr. Gordon?
Currently, I'm not aware of any state or federal money that's available to bring high-speed internet to localities like Hanover. That may change in the future, but at this point in time, there is no monies that I'm aware of. I will tell you that I just received the results of a survey that shows that 97% of the folks who were surveyed in my district believes that the board should investigate facilitation of bringing high-speed internet to the entire county. Facilitation, not actually paying for the infrastructure, but speaking as one voice to the providers, to the service providers, in an effort to bring high-speed internet to the entire county. Information is the key to success in any endeavor, and information is unlimited with access to high-speed internet.
Thank you. Mr. Hazard?
I'm certainly not aware of any funds for high-speed internet. I would think if the demand is there, the entrepreneurial spirit of free enterprise will provide it. I think one of the problems we have is that we have a tendency to want to listen, and what my opponent said about having 97% of the people interviewed is kind of like polls. They interview 1,000 people, and the result of those 1,000 people then dictate what everybody else does. I'm not sure those polls are realistic as far as the need, but if the need's there, I promise you the entrepreneurial spirit will fill it.
Thank you. Over to Chickahominy, Ms. Kelly-Winsett.
Thank you. I have had the privilege of serving on 2 of the high-speed internet committees, and I can tell you that our research has showed that there is no federal or state money grant available to us. We, as a county, are too affluent by someone's standards, and we are also too populous by the other standards. And let's be honest, federal and state grant money is taxpayer money. So whether it comes from the state, whether it comes from the county, whether it comes from the federal government, if it's grant money, it's coming out of your pocket. So we are investigating a number of very positive, in my opinion. Just tonight we heard some very positive solutions and options that may actually bring us better results for our citizens, and at this point I would be supportive of the county being a resource to provide citizens the information so that they can obtain high-speed internet service through the private sector wherever possible.
Thank you. Mr. Ellis.
There's not a whole lot to add to this. The 3 of us are on the same committee, and Angela and I both served on the ad hoc committee that Mr. Gordon put together last summer. I had a hand in that report, and we've tried to keep all the options on the table, and one of the early things we did look at was grant funding from on high. And for the reasons mentioned, we're not in the tobacco settlement fund area in Southside. We're not rural enough. But when you listen to the people who came out to the 2 town halls that we had about this issue, they really need something done. The reason why there's a committee is because the private sector is not providing those services right now. People can't sell their homes without internet access. Their children can fall behind at school. There's major inconveniences because of this. We've gotten to the point where internet access is no longer a nicety. It really is part of modern life. So we're working on it, but I think some type of public-private partnership with facilitation is where we're headed.
Thank you. This question is directed to all candidates, and you'll all love this one. We'll start with Mr. Kite. Would you be in favor of term limits for the Board of Supervisor position?
There you go. All right. Yes, term limitations. Career politicians, it's a joke. Nobody should be in office that long. I would say if the president has a limit of 2 terms, then I think everybody should be limited to 2 terms.
Thank you. Ms. Cash?
I do believe there should be term limits, but I think part of the reason is because it gives you a chance to get a fresh view that can look backward at what's happened, but also look forward at the potential that is still there for more, for an even better Hanover County. And so I would say that that would be beneficial.
Thank you. Mr. Wade?
I've been on the board 20 years, and I'm still learning. But let me just say this. Every election year, we are on term limits. It's up to you. If I'm not doing my job, my term is over. So term limits, some people say, okay, yeah, but sometimes in term limits, you get rid of some good people. 3 years ago, we asked for a change. We need term limits there, that's for sure.
Thank you, Mr. Hazard.
I'm definitely for term limits. I have said it all along. We need them not only for the Board of Supervisors, but probably for all of our elected officials. Unfortunately, the Board of Supervisors is not going to be able to do it to take a referendum. It'll have to come from you. So if you want term limits, you'll have to make it happen.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson.
I do not believe in term limits because you, the people in this room, as Mr. Wade said, we create term limits every 4 years.
Mr. Gordon, thank you.
I also don't believe in any artificial commitment to end the service of a great leader or statesperson. I think it's just like any other job. It's based on performance. As long as a leader brings the passion, the energy, the enthusiasm, and as long as he or she delivers, then I think they should have the opportunity to stand for election, and then it's your decision as to whether it's time to end their term.
Thank you. Mr. Ellis.
I understand why the question would be posed. I understand the frustration with a system that's been created by the 2 political parties where majorities of districts every year go uncontested, where it seems to be very difficult to get people out of office even when their performance is not good. But I really still have to say that we've got to do a better job as citizens to create that term limit every election. I would not want to see term limits, but I understand the frustration. Maybe that's a soft no to term limits.
Ms. Winans?
I believe we already have term limits, and I think every time you go to the polls, that's your opportunity to set our term. And it's up to you. If you want us to stay, if you think we've done a good job, then you set our term.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly Weisig.
Yeah, change for change's sake is not always a good thing, as our friend Elton Wade put it. We had that in 2008. That change isn't working out all that well, in my opinion. So I think to try to apply a one-size-fits-all arbitrary limit may not be the smartest thing, and I encourage you, as I have always done, to go out and vote every time you get a chance. It's our constitutional obligation. It is our duty to go out and vote, and if you are not happy with the person who represents you, any person who represents you, contact them and then vote them out.
Thank you. Mr. Davis.
You know, I've gone back and forth on this issue since I was a young man. From 1980 to 88, I didn't believe in term limits for the president. Obviously, some things have changed. But here's the thing. I do understand from a business standpoint that when somebody's doing well, you do want to keep them in there, especially when you have something, when government is this close to the people. Most of the frustration comes when you have somebody who's not in there, that's a friend of lobbyists, and all kinds of crazy things that go on, and they're entrenched. And none of us like that, so we say, well, that might be a good idea. But the fact of the matter is, the responsibility is ours, the citizens, to speak our voice on election day and create those term limits. And on November 8th, you'll have that choice in a very critical election here in Hanover.
Thank you, Mr. Byer.
I do believe in term limits, and I don't know how many terms that equates to, but I do know that there are a lot of qualified people in this county who could really do a good job, not just as a Board of Supervisor, but in other positions. And I would encourage you and folks that you know to come forward, because there's an untapped wealth of people in this county who can really do a good job. So I would ask you to think about that very strongly.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson.
I think, given the current situation that we have, that term limits make good sense, because I think it's very difficult to unseat an incumbent. They always have an advantage. They have name recognition. They oftentimes have more financial support. Running as an independent, you don't have the party system to pay for slick brochures or, lots of signs. You have to really kind of raise that from the grassroots. And I think that's why, running as an independent and having that grassroots support is so important. I'm not looking to be a career politician. I'm looking just to represent the citizens of Hanover County. And so, I'd be perfectly happy with term limits in order to do the job in a short amount of time and not linger too long and let other people step up to the plate.
Thank you very much. This question is addressed to all candidates. We'll start with you, Ms. Jackson. Do you like the Tea Party principles? Limited government, less taxes, fiscal responsibility, constitutional adherence, others?
I would agree with, I think most of what the Tea Party principles are. I think we all want to keep limited government. We all want to keep our taxes low. I don't think there's anybody in this room who doesn't agree with the Constitution of this country. So I think the principles are certainly something that we would all agree with. I think what happens oftentimes with any group is that I think it's how you view the implementation of those principles. I think it's wonderful to have organized groups that are having a stronger voice in what happens to government at the local level, the state level, and the federal level. I think any involvement of citizens and really looking at the issues and making sure that you have the facts on those issues is important to make a sound decision as you participate in government.
Thank you. Mr. Byer?
I believe in low taxes, limited government, and the Constitution of the United States. And if that puts me somewhere near where most of you all are, then that's where I am. And I appreciate the opportunity to be with you tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Davis?
I'm a constitutional conservative, so yes. But here's the bigger issue is that the Constitution has been written. It's not there for interpretation. We've opened that door, and what ends up happening is we get focus groups saying, well, maybe this is what this means. Maybe this is what this means. Maybe this is what this means, so we change. So quite frankly, I have to go back. This isn't to offend anybody. I agree with those principles, but I think our founding fathers had them before the Tea Party had them.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly-Weising?
Yes, I do. Of primary importance among those goals, the top two for me would certainly be limited government and fiscal responsibility. And as local elected officials, our job is to focus on the pillars of local government, schools, public safety, and then services of certain citizens who are unable to, truly unable to provide for themselves. So special services there. I think the other portion of that is that fiscal responsibility, and again, I have a lot of experience in the private sector, ensuring that people are getting a good value for their money, that we're providing return on investment for the money that's entrusted to us. And let's face it, again, you're entrusting your tax money to us, and you're expecting us to do right by you.
Thank you. Ms. Winans?
I think if you'll look at any of my literature, my website, from this time and last time, those are the top items on everything that I've produced. And I think that I have also represented that in the way I voted on the board. And I would also add individual freedom and rights.
Thank you. Mr. Ellis?
I do, and I'm all about citizen engagement. It's really hard to find a group of citizens more engaged right now than the Tea Party. And I think that's really healthy for us, and I commend it. Fiscal responsibility, I see as the core message of the Tea Party, and I think that's a very important message for us. I think it keeps us on track. When we get into issues about how to interpret sustainable development or Agenda 21 issues, I think those are fringe issues that actually undermine the core message of the Tea Party. But yes, I am definitely in line with the core principles of the Tea Party. I think it's very healthy for our democracy.
Thank you. Mr. Gordon?
Yes, I think Hanover County, particularly in the way local government has conducted itself in the past 4 years, I think we are a shining example. I think we are a model of what the Tea Party is all about. When you look at what we've accomplished, a AAA bond rating, that's fiscal management. That's fiscal management. When you look at the lowest tax rates in the region, that's what the Tea Party, in my estimation, is about. When you look at the school system that performs in the top 10% in the state, yet our per pupil cost is in the lowest 10%. We get the most for the less. That is what I believe the Tea Party is all about. When you look at how safe folks feel in Hanover County, that's what I believe the Tea Party is all about. When you look at citizen engagement, the folks that are here tonight, that's what I believe the Tea Party is all about. If the federal government conducted itself the way Hanover County government conducted itself, this would be a better nation.
Sorry about that, Mr. Peterson. Thank you.
These core principles of the Tea Party that were listed in this question are the same principles our founding fathers had when they established this country. And I thank the Tea Parties for making the country take a new look at these principles, and let's get back to them and not stray from them.
Thank you. Mr. Hazard.
Well, like I said earlier, I've been Tea Party longer than Tea Party's been here, but I'm just so happy that you organized yourselves, that you came forward. Just think about it. Tonight, we would not have this event were it not for you. The principles that you represent are the core principles that make America what it is. And for us to lose those principles is just unconscionable to me, but I'm worried about it. So please don't quit, and please keep bringing more people into the fold. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wade?
I said it before and I'll say it again. I certainly believe in the principles of the Tea Party. And let me just say this. As a citizen, I admire the calmness and the steadfastness that they did when they went to Washington to represent us, a nation. And I admire these signs, the yellow signs up that is telling people some of the facts. A lot of people don't know what's going on unless something happens right on that doorstep. But we need to stay involved, and being a part of Tea Party is certainly a good way to go.
Thank you. Ms. Cash.
Limited government, yes. Low taxes, yes. Support of the Constitution, yes. I will tell you that education and safety are the priorities that I believe we need to put forward and continue to support. And I think that for 35 years as an educator, I have lived that. And my husband, with 27 years of service with the military, has done the same thing. So I believe we would support all of those.
Thank you. Mr. Kite?
And Carol's husband was an A6 intruder pilot, which is quite the thing. But why we all started this country, over taxation, misrepresentation. Tea Party has filled the gap that was called on by the people. It's all about limiting government. It's about putting the power back in the hands of the people. And of course, that's all up to y'all as citizens to make that happen. You have to get out, you have to vote, you have to become active in your government. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kite. Mr. Kite, I think we'll start with you again for this question. Let's go through the whole panel on this one. I recently refinanced my house, and the bank required the commercial appraisal to include at least 2 foreclosures to reflect market conditions relative to our Hanover County tax appraisal. What is your perspective on revaluation in our tax assessments to also include foreclosures and/or short sales?
Not too sure about that one. If you're averaging in foreclosures, then of course it's going to draw down your property value. I know I live in a cul-de-sac of 3 homes. Out of those 3, one of them was closed on foreclosure. Our tax rate, how the houses and our property is valued. Yeah, I saw my last property value, and I'm pretty sure my house isn't worth all that. But it increased the amount of taxes that the county got. Maybe we should average in the foreclosures. Maybe that will help out with the people and how much they have to put out of their pocket on their taxes every year. But I'm really not too sure of how to handle that, but foreclosures should definitely be pulled into it because there are so many of them.
Thank you. Ms. Cash?
Could we start at the other end? I actually don't know how to answer that one. I think I'd need more information on it, but it makes sense that you have to get some kind of reasonable evaluation. How that's brought together, whether it's with foreclosure, short sales, or some revaluation of some sort. Outside of that, I'd have to have someone help me understand what would be the best way. But I think it needs to be a realistic evaluation of your values.
Thank you. Mr. Wade?
I think in Hanover, and certainly I think a lot of our foreclosures are caused by people who have gone out and bought houses and things that they certainly couldn't afford. It started out, it was fine, and then the payments and all is what I feel has caused a lot of that foreclosure. Now the assessments on your property, you know, you have ways of making sure you have proper assessments. And we certainly have that through our departments, and also if you're not satisfied with your assessed value, then you can even go to the judge of Hanover County and make sure your property is being assessed properly. And sometimes they're not. Sometimes they've made mistakes up there.
Thank you. Mr. Hazard?
I think assessments are like gas prices. They went up in a hurry, but they're having a heck of a time getting back down. And what I don't understand and why people don't think short sales and foreclosures shouldn't be included in our assessed value. When you lived in your house for 25 years and up the street they built 3 or 4 houses that were worth a lot more money, your assessment went up because of that. Why shouldn't it go down based on what the real sales are in the neighborhood? If the sales are short sales, then by Jove, that's what they sold for. So it should be what's good for the goose is good for the gander. I think that assessments probably already should have been down, and they haven't come down enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson.
My understanding is that assessments in Hanover County do not include short sales and foreclosures as part of the process. And I believe that that's probably the best way to, as far as assessments, but assessments need to be made on real values, not where somebody just lost their shirt on a house. On the other hand, the question referred to the banks. The county does not control what banks require as far as that. That is private sector business versus government and should be kept separate.
Thank you. Mr. Gordon.
Mr. Peterson is exactly right. We have no control over how banks handle such matters. But and quite frankly, we have very little control over assessments. The state law dictates how we are to assess. It demands that we assess at 100% fair market value. When I came on the board 16 years ago, myself and others, we directed staff to present us with a review of the assessment process because we all had heard complaints. And we spent a great deal of time reviewing the current process only to make no changes. 6 years later, we did it again. We went through that process, a very grueling review, and we discovered that while we don't particularly like the process that we have today is the best process. Now, I will tell you that in this new economy that no one expected, maybe it's time to take another look. Maybe there are some options that we didn't even consider before because this is, again, a new economic reality.
Thank you. Mr. Ellis?
The way I understood the question, the homeowner was trying to refinance. And so if you're talking about taxes and assessments, you'd probably want to have the foreclosures included because it would lower your tax bill. But if you're trying to refinance your house, you probably want to exclude them because your refinancing package and maybe your ability to get a home equity line of credit is going to be based on a higher assessed value. So I think the question was actually kind of saying, I'm in a bad position because they are including these foreclosures. Now, having said all that, I think your supervisors on the board serve more as generalists than specialists. There's a relationship between the board and the county staff. There's a relationship between the board and technical experts out there. And this would be a situation where I'd want to also research it and learn more about this broader question. But I do think that Mr. Peterson and Mr. Gordon bring up a good point, that there may be nothing that a county government could do about the practices of the private sector banks.
Thank you. Ms. Winans?
Being a real estate agent, I've found that people want their assessment to be high when they get ready to sell and low the rest of the time. So I can't help you much there. But I do know that the state sets the rules. It should be based on actual value, and actual value is the houses that are around you, the similar houses and what they've sold for. That is true market value. So in concluding that, I think that we need to re-look at our regulation, and the state also needs to take a look at it so that we can make that decision based on true market value.
Thank you. Ms. Keller, what do you say?
Yeah, I would actually echo quite a bit of what Debbie said, that we need to review our process and also take a look at what the state requires of us in order to make sure that we have an efficient and a fair process. Again, we don't want to be changing our laws based on market whims or what works for us now but may create problems down the road. So again, I would be certainly in favor, as John said, of a continual review of that process to make sure that it's fair.
Thank you. Mr. Davis?
The market will always tell you what something's worth. It's worth what someone's willing to pay for it. Now, if you're willing to pay $5, but your government wants you to pay taxes on 10, it's inappropriate. You have to count foreclosures and short sales. Now, there was a time where we would call them, it's not really an arm's length transaction. One out of the blue was foreclosed on, or there was a short sale or something along those lines, and you really couldn't run a whole neighborhood through that. Unfortunately, when you have 5 homes in, say, a 100-home subdivision that have been foreclosed on, it drastically affects the value. And if you can't sell your home for that, then you shouldn't be paying taxes on that. And, I know the state has regulations and rules, and I think that just re-emphasizes that it's got to be handled here, okay? It's got to be handled here. If your house isn't worth it, if your land's not worth it because you can't sell it for that, then you have a hard time justifying, in my mind, why you're paying taxes on something that you can't sell it for.
Thank you. Mr. Wyatt?
We find ourselves in very, very tough economic times, and even that being the fact, we all got ourselves where we are because we're all part of a system. So wherever we happen to be at the moment is because we let ourselves get there. That being said, I would be in favor of including all sales, and would note to you that the way that we assess here in Hanover County is very similar, if not exactly, the way it is with our regional members around the Richmond area.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson?
Well, I think you've had some interesting comments on both the appraisal process and the assessment process, but the thing that's most important to you as the citizens of Hanover County is what's the tax rate on your real estate. So that's based on an amount per 100. I think we're at 81 cents per 100 right now. So for every $100 of your assessed value, that's going to add to your taxes. So keeping our tax rate very low is the thing that the Board of Supervisors does have control over, and that's the thing that I will pledge to continue to do. Now, how frequently that assessment occurs, that's something else that the county can decide. But I think in fairness, we want to look at who has the vested interest. So if you're in the real estate business, you're going to have a more vested interest in making sure that the values are high so that your return on selling houses is going to be higher. Or if you're not in the real estate business and you're just concerned about the citizens, you're going to want to make sure that there are fair tax assessments and a low tax rate. And that's what's on my brochure and what is part of my campaign and what I will stand by.
Thank you very much. The hour is getting a little bit late, so I think we'll get through a couple more questions. Let's keep it to a 30-second round this time for everybody. Let's go with this one for everybody. Would you support Hanover County adopting a policy of elected school board members? 30 seconds each, starting with Ms. Jackson.
I think as we were talking before about school board members, we want to make sure we get the most qualified members on the school board. The process that we have right now does allow for appointed school board members, and I think while we are doing that, we need to make sure that we're getting the best qualified folks. It would be up to the citizens of Hanover County to decide if we want to have elected school board members.
Thank you. Mr. Byer?
It is imperative that we continue to have an appointed school board. Every single school system and administration in our region is completely jealous of the way that our Board of Supervisors and school board can get along, deal with issues, and it has worked really well for us in a lot of other areas where they have switched over to elected school boards. It has not worked.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Thank you. Initially, I thought, well, that'd be a great plan. I'm not for elected school board members, and I'll tell you why. What I see happening is you will find, of course, school board members can't run on a party, but what you will see is grandiose promises without any taxing authority. And then what will happen is they say, I was going to give you this, I was going to give your children this, yet the board wouldn't allow me. And we see it all the time, and you will put your children, you will put the parents, the teachers, and the principals in the school pitted against your local government. You'll have politicians banging it out. So I'm not for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Keller-Weasley.
I, too, would not support at this time an elected school board. That may not be what some of you want to hear, but I think it's important that you know what my position on that would be. I believe it would lead to an increase in partisanship and rancor, empty promises, maybe even a call for a new taxing authority, and I think nobody would support that. One other point, I have actually read a couple of articles where they're looking at returning statewide to appointed school boards because of the problems that some localities have had. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Winans.
I can tell you firsthand that other counties in Virginia are very envious of our system, and also you have to remember that if you go to elected school board, the next step is a taxing authority for school boards, and we don't need another tax.
Thank you. Ms. Rellis.
Angela and I actually talked about this at one of our little subcommittee meetings on the High-Speed Internet Committee a few months ago, and for some reason a couple of years ago I was hitting the internet to research this issue, and I don't remember why I was doing that, but you know, it was probably a Friday night. It was really exciting. It was time to look at elected school board issues. The research that I was able to find, and it was on the internet, so it must be true, is supports the position that we probably should not go to elected school boards. I found a reasonably good paper, no difference in performance, and the problems that the other folks cited. So I don't support it.
Thank you. Mr. Gordon.
The citizens of Hanover cast their ballots on this question. I believe it may have been 94 or 96. And they voted overwhelmingly to support the current appointed process. The result of that decision is performance in the top 10, per pupil costs in the bottom 10. I'm not about to change that, so I support the current system.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson.
Any elected board that has no taxing authority is an ineffective board. And we don't need another taxing authority, so we don't need an elected school board.
Thank you. Mr. Hazard?
I agree. My son is running in Goochland for the school board. Believe it or not, as small as their community is, they have elected school boards. And the school board and the Board of Supervisors hated each other. And unfortunately, the supervisors had the money. So that kind of war we don't need in this county. And I think that when you appoint or elect a new supervisor, you also elect a new school board person. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Wade.
In the state of Virginia, we only have 2 or 3 counties that actually have appointed school boards. And I know the Tea Party certainly want to support elected school boards, but for the reason, that's another form of government. You're adding on. We want less government. And this also, it keeps the school board members out of politics. Let them worry about the school system.
Thank you, Ms. Cash.
I would say I would not want elected school boards because I've had the opportunity to see what happened in several other areas when we went from appointed to elected. We went from caring for all the children to being specialists for certain children, and we ended up with many of the other issues that have been described. So it seems to me that the system that is here is one of the best systems I've ever seen, because they do work well together, and they work well with the Board of Supervisors, and they work for all children.
Thank you, Mr. Kite.
No elected school board members should all be by qualifications. There is no need for party separation in the school board when our children are the ones who will suffer. And to use the last of my 30 seconds, would everybody please, if you're physically fit and able to do so, join Bucky and myself tomorrow, King's Dominion at 9 o'clock, to continue to search for this poor young man who is now way too many nights in the cold.
Thank you, Mr. Kite. We'll start with you on our final question for the evening. I can put it in a general form. What will you do to help strengthen business in our community? If you want to go on by reducing government regulations, but in general, what would you do to strengthen our business community?
Well, strengthen our business community is to do what we've already mentioned earlier, is to utilize the established areas that we plan on putting businesses. I'm all about it if it's already in an established area. Again, not going too crazy. We could easily turn 360 in Hanover into 360 on the other side of town. We don't need that. But again, we need the businesses. Businesses help pay for things such as transportation issues, things of that nature, where we cannot afford to pull it out of the taxpayer's pocket. So that'll be it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cash.
Our government has, our county government has indicated that there is a lot of support for business, and they've done a lot to try to make that happen. However, the most recent survey, less than 6 months ago, if I'm not mistaken, had a lot of people who were dissatisfied with what they perceived to be red tape, delays, those kinds of things. Whether or not they exist, their perception is there. So we need to continue to work to do what we have said we will do to make our business people, who are part of our community, a welcome part of our community within the culture that we have established.
Thank you, Mr. Wade.
Hanover County has business as certainly first priority when it comes to this county to start a business. I know in the last 3 or 4 years there hadn't been any business because people don't have the monies and all to certainly start those business. But as a board member, and I certainly feel that when they're here to serve, to want a business established, we make it first priority. And certainly not in every case. There might be some tweaking that needs to be done, but we feel comfortable that we do everything to keep our businesses in Hanover.
Thank you. Mr. Hazard?
We hired a new economic development head, and we designate land for economic development. But ladies and gentlemen, until the day somebody meets you at the door and says, Mr. or Ms. Business Person, how can I help you accomplish what you want to do? Economic development in Hanover County will remain an oxymoron. And I'm sorry, but the truth is we need to get out of the way, and maybe we can develop a little more economic. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson?
Well, echoing that sentiment a little bit, I have been preaching since this campaign started that it's time for us to start changing some of the stumbling blocks that this county puts in front of business into stepping stones. And if we do that, we can start bringing business, not just bringing business to town, it's taking our local businesses that are already here and helping them to grow and prosper. Because they're the ones that create the jobs for the people that are unemployed and for our 1,000 to 2,000 kids that we put out every year that are graduating and have no place to go to work.
Thank you. Mr. Boyd.
Yes, I have been that one of those somebodies who have met folks at the door for the past 16 years. And that's why we have Bass Pro in Hanover County right now. That's why we have an outlet center coming to Hanover County next year. That's why we have the North Lake Center, which is one of the most successful parks in the central Virginia. That's why we have Kings Dominion continuing to expand, because we are in fact meeting them at the door. Hanover recently opened a green tech incubator to train folks on how to be successful. I believe we can do more incubators, and I have a lot more to say, but I'm out of time.
Thank you. Mr. Ellis.
I'm going to have to talk fast. I would approach it as a partnership. I think the private sector actually needs the infrastructure investment from the public sector. The public sector obviously needs the revenue, the tax revenues from the private sector. They both need to be there for each other. It is a team effort. But I would want to focus on the small businesses in Hanover County. I'd want to see our county staff expend the same effort and creativity and energy to find ways for them to be successful that I've seen them expend on behalf of some of the big guys. I think we can emphasize historic tourism and agriculture. I think this area is the best area for history in the entire country. If you understand this area, you understand the United States of America.
Thank you. Ms. Winans.
One of the things I've actually already done, and I started working in 1999 with some other business people, is to get a small area plan for the village of Mechanicsville, one of the older commerce areas in Mechanicsville. And it will allow businesses that are already there to make changes that they couldn't have made otherwise because of the zoning regulations. So I've already started working on this. And also, as far as tourism, we welcomed over 2,000 people to our old courthouse to see the Parsons cause, and we're doing all we can to promote tourism. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly-Wiesack.
Thank you. Again, going back to the business approach, to make sure we're bringing businesses to Hanover County, again, applying principles of continuous improvement to make sure that we're not just saying that we're open for business, but that we actually are open for business, that we're making it easier for businesses to come to Hanover. We want to leverage what we offer with good schools, safe communities, and sound financial management to bring those businesses in. It not only helps defray the tax burden, but then it also supports the existing businesses that we have here. So that is a win-win. And again, when we're talking about leveraging, I want to leverage what we have with bringing people who come to places like Bass Pro Shop to ensure that they are also coming and enjoying the many historic resources we have here. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Davis.
Sure, business is important. They're the ones that, I mean, they carry the freight. That's the facts. And they lower the tax burden on us. So knowing that, working with the HABCC, being a member there and understanding the unique aspects of what's taking place in businesses right now is very important. That message from the business community needs to be taken to the government, and there needs to be a little bit of a change in culture of saying we're open for business, but I need to hear from the business community. I just can't come up with a government solution without hearing from the business community. And I know we do that with the HABCC. I know we do that with the Historic Paul Green Church. We're always looking because we understand on both sides. There's never a nonprofit without having somebody who made a profit. But we have a lot of aspects, a lot of resources here that we can leverage, and I think it's important that the business community have a voice in their government.
Thank you. Mr. Byer.
We have a new way of growing business in Hanover County, and that is the Dominion Resources Business Incubator. This is a location where a business can come and rent a cubicle space to do energy research, whether it be windmills or whatever. And what we have is they come in and they get a certain 3 years to build their business, get it started there, and then they have to get out. And when they do get out, we hope that their business will be strong enough so they will be able to sustain themselves and really stay in Hanover County. So that'd be a great way to help build new businesses in Hanover.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson.
I think we need to keep a strong commitment to economic development here in the county. We want to make sure we support our small business owners because they are really bearing the burden of a lot of the things that we've been talking about. And to be attractive to new businesses, I think we've got to make sure that we do have incentives to bring them into the county. I think our school system, the amenities that we have do draw the support of local businesses and others who are looking to locate in Central Virginia. Hanover is a unique place, and I think doing a better job on tourism will help us with that. We've seen some recent numbers on tourism. We're not doing as much as we can. We have so many historic resources. We could bring more dollars in and jobs in if we really promote tourism better here in Hanover County.
Thank you all very much. With that, I'd like to say a couple thank yous. I'd like to thank all of the candidates for being very respectful of time. And more importantly, I want to thank you all for being respectful of each other. I think you provided us with a great evening, and I'm proud to be on the stage with all of you. And I'm also very proud of the audience. I think everyone has conducted themselves very well. And with that, I'm out of your way, and the baritone moderator, Clark West, will take my place.